The woman shoved her chair back so hard it screamed against the tile, and every head in the restaurant turned. She jabbed one finger at the phone, lying face up on the table at the crayon drawing of a little girl and a stick-figure daddy under a lopsided sun. "I did not cross this whole city on Christmas Eve," she said loud enough for the waiters to freeze, "to raise another woman's child." Then she was gone, and Jordan Mitchell sat alone, holding 40 years of shame in his 2 hands. But the stranger at the next table had heard every word, and in 10 minutes she would ask him a question no one on this earth had ever asked him before. Tell me in the comments what city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. And if second chances still mean something to you, subscribe and stay with me all the way to the end. The drawing was still warm from his pocket. That was the strange thing Jordan Mitchell kept coming back to, sitting there in the sudden silence with the woman's perfume still hanging in the air like an accusation. The little folded square of paper had been against his chest all night, riding over his heartbeat. And when he finally opened it under the table, his hands were shaking so badly the sun his daughter had drawn seemed to tremble in the sky. He had unfolded it because he needed to look at something that loved him. "You okay over here, sir?" The waiter had appeared at his elbow, young, nervous, holding a pitcher of water he clearly didn't need to refill. Jordan looked up and understood that the boy had watched the whole thing, that the whole room had, that he was now the man who'd been left. The man too complicated to love. "I'm fine," Jordan said. His voice came out steady, which surprised him. Could I get a few minutes?" "Take all the time you want." The kid hesitated. "For what it's worth, that was a rotten thing," she said. "You heard it?" "Mr. the Kitchen heard it." Jordan almost laughed. Almost. Instead, he folded the drawing back along its worn creases and pressed it flat against the tablecloth, smoothing it the way you'd smooth a wrinkle out of a child's shirt before school. Her name was Amaya. She was 7. 2 hours ago, she'd handed him this drawing at the door of his sister's apartment and told him very seriously, "This is so you're brave on your date, Daddy." He'd knelt down to her level the way he always did, because his late wife Nia used to say, "You never talk down to a child, you always meet them where they stand." "You think I need to be brave?" he'd asked. "Uncle Marcus said dates are scary." Uncle Marcus, Jordan had said, should mind his own business. And Amaya had laughed that huge, wide-open laugh that showed the gap where her front tooth used to be, and thrown her arms around his neck and whispered, "If she's mean, you can come home." He hadn't understood at 7 o'clock that evening how much a 7-year-old could see. Now it was nearly 9, and he was coming home. He didn't move. He couldn't, not yet, because if he stood up right now, he'd have to walk past all these tables, past the couples leaning toward each other in the candlelight, past the family in the corner, with the grandfather at the head of it, and every single one of them would look at him and know. So he stayed. He looked at his daughter's son. He tried to breathe. 3 years. 3 years since Naya. 3 years of packing lunches with the crusts cut off the way Amaya liked, of learning to braid hair, from a video on his phone at midnight of parent-teacher conferences, where the other seats were filled with couples, and he sat in the small chair alone. 3 years of being told gently, and not so gently by his mother, by his sister, by well-meaning men at church, that a girl needs a woman in her life, that he couldn't do it by himself forever, that he deserved to be happy too. He deserved to be happy too. People said that like it was a door you could just walk through. His sister had set up tonight. Renee had a friend had a cousin. The cousin was lovely Jordan, and she's ready for something real. He'd said no 4 times. He'd said no because the last time he tried this 8 months ago, the woman had spent the whole dinner texting and then told him at the end kindly that she wasn't really a kid's person. He'd said no because every time he opened himself up like this, he came home feeling like there was something wrong with the shape of his life. He'd said no because it was easier to be a good father than a disappointed man. And then Renee had put Amaya on the phone, and Amaya had said, "Daddy, you should go. Then you won't be lonely when I'm at school." And something in his chest had cracked wide open because his baby girl was 7 years old and worrying about whether her father was lonely. So he'd said yes. For her. And this was how it ended. A woman named Bethany, who'd been perfectly pleasant for exactly 11 minutes, who'd laughed at his joke about Chicago winters, who'd said, "You have kind eyes," right up until his phone lit up on the table with Amaya's face, because his sister was sending a photo of the girl in her Christmas pajamas, and Bethany had looked at it and looked at him, and the temperature of the entire evening had dropped 40 degrees. "Is that my daughter, Amaya? She's 7. You didn't mention a daughter." He had actually, in his profile. He'd been careful to. "I did put it in I don't read those all the way through." And then she'd asked how old and where was the mother, and when he said the mother had passed, she'd gotten quiet, and he'd thought, God help him. He'd actually thought that maybe the quiet was sympathy. That maybe she was a decent person, taking in a hard thing. Instead, she'd said the temperature was too high in there, and picked up her purse and told him she was sorry, but she didn't sign up to date a man with someone else's child, and that his life was honestly a lot, and stood up so fast the chair screamed and delivered that last line loud enough for the whole restaurant and left him. Someone else's child. He turned the words over. He'd heard them before in softer forms, dressed up in politeness. "That's a lot to take on. You come as a package. I'm just not in a place for instant family." He'd trained himself to nod at those to say he understood, to pay the check and drive home and check on his sleeping daughter and tell himself it was fine. But there was something about the nakedness of it tonight, the someone else's child, that got underneath all his defenses, because Amaya was not someone else's child. Amaya was his whole entire life. He didn't realize he'd said part of that out loud until the voice came from the next table. "She's not, though." Jordan turned his head. The woman sitting a few feet away had a book open in front of her, and a cup of coffee gone cold, and a way of looking at a person that made you feel like you'd been caught. She was maybe his age, dressed simply expensively, in the kind of clothes that don't announce themselves. She had sharp eyes. That was the first thing he'd remember about her later, that she had eyes that didn't look away from hard things. "I'm sorry," he said. "Someone else's child." She said it back to him quietly, testing it. "That's what she called your daughter. But she's not someone else's child. She's yours. I could tell from the way you looked at that phone." Jordan felt his defenses come back up all at once, hard, automatic. "I didn't realize the whole restaurant was listening." "They weren't. They were embarrassed for you and pretending not to. I was listening." She closed her book. "There's a difference." "And what's the difference?" "They felt sorry for you. I understood you." She held his gaze. "That's a very different thing." He should have paid his check. That was the smart move, the safe move, the move he'd have made any other night. Thank her, be polite, go home, hold his daughter. Instead, he heard himself say, "You don't know anything about me." "No," she agreed. "I don't. But I watched a woman get up and leave you because you love your kid. And I know exactly what that feels like, being rejected for a thing about yourself that you'd never in 100 years change." She turned her coffee cup a slow quarter turn on its saucer. "You want to know something? I've been sitting here for an hour, reading the same page over and over, because I couldn't make myself go home to an empty house on Christmas Eve. So don't tell me I don't understand you. I understand you better than the woman who walked in here to meet you did." For a long moment, Jordan didn't say anything. The restaurant had gone back to its own noise, clinking glasses, low laughter, a Christmas song he half recognized coming from a speaker somewhere. The family in the corner was singing Happy Birthday, now to the grandfather off-key, and the old man was covering his face with both hands, laughing. "What's your name?" Jordan asked finally. "Camila." She paused. "Camila Bennett." "Jordan Mitchell." He almost put his hand out across the gap between the tables, then didn't. "I'm sorry you're alone on Christmas Eve, Camila Bennett. I really am. But I've had about as much of tonight as I can take, so I'm going to pay and go home to my daughter, and I hope your holiday." "Sit down for 1 minute," she said. "Please, not for me, for you." He'd been half out of his chair. He stopped. "You're about to drive home carrying this," she said. "I can see it. You're going to walk into your house and check on your little girl, and you're going to stand in her doorway, And you're going to think it. You're going to think, is she the reason I'm always going to be alone? And I need you to not think that. Because it isn't true. And it's a poison, and I have watched it get inside good people and rot them from the inside out. Jordan sat back down slowly. He didn't know why. Later, when he tried to explain it to himself, the closest he could come was this: he'd spent 3 years surrounded by people who wanted him to be okay. And this stranger was the first person in a long time who seemed to actually see that he wasn't. "How do you know what I'm going to think?" he said. "Because I've thought the same shape of thought about myself for 2 years. She turned the coffee cup again. "Different words, same poison. Is there something about me that makes me impossible to love?" She looked up. "You want to hear something, or do you want to go home? Either's fine. I mean that. But if you want to hear something, I'll tell you a true thing, and then you can decide I'm crazy and leave. Fair." "Fair," Jordan said before he decided to. "I run a company," Camilla said. "Technology. I built it from nothing, one laptop, a folding table, a lot of nights. I don't recommend to anyone. It does very well now. Very well." She said it flatly without pride, like a fact about the weather. "And for about 10 years I told myself that the reason I was alone was the work. No time. Too busy. Married to the company. That's a very comfortable lie, Jordan, because it means you're the one in control. You could have love if you wanted it. You're just choosing the mission." She stopped. "And then 2 years ago, I met a man, and I let myself want it. For real. And I found out that the actual reason wasn't the work at all." She was quiet for a second. Jordan waited. "I can't have children," she said. There were complications. Medical, it doesn't matter what. The point is, it's not a thing that's going to change." She was looking at him very steadily now, and he understood that she was doing something that cost her, that she was handing him a thing she didn't hand people. And this man I'd let myself love when he found out. Do you know what he said to me? No. He said, "I can't build a family with someone who can't give me an heir." She let it sit there in the air between them. An heir. Like I was a kingdom with a succession problem. A small, terrible smile. "So, you had a woman get up and walk out on you tonight for loving a child too much. And I had a man walk out on me for not being able to have one at all. And here we both are on Christmas Eve in the same sad restaurant, both of us alone." She spread her hands. "You still think I don't understand you?" Jordan looked at her for a long moment. "No," he said quietly. "I don't think that." "Good." She nodded once like they'd settled something. "Now I'm going to say a thing, and I need you to let me finish before you decide I've lost my mind. Can you do that? That is not a comforting way to start a sentence. It's not a comforting thing to say." She took a breath. "I've been sitting here for an hour, and I watched your whole evening happen, and somewhere in the middle of it, I had a thought I can't shake, and I've learned in my life that when I can't shake a thought, I'm supposed to say it out loud, even when it terrifies me. So, here it is." She looked right at him. "Would you be my husband?" For a second, Jordan was certain he'd misheard her. "I'm sorry, what—" "You heard me." "I know, I heard sounds. I don't think I heard that." "Would you," Camilla said, slower, steadier, "be my husband?" Jordan laughed. It came out of him before he could stop it. A short, startled, disbelieving laugh, the laugh of a man whose night had already gone so far off the rails that this somehow was the thing that broke the tension. "Ma'am, Camilla, we met 4 minutes ago." "6, but who's counting? You don't propose marriage to a man you've known for 6 minutes." "I'm not proposing marriage. Well," she tilted her head. "I'm proposing something. Let me explain it. And if it's insane, you can tell me it's insane, and I'll pay for your dinner as an apology, and we'll never see each other again. You already can't have kids, and you want to marry a stranger, and I'm supposed to think you're the sane one here. Jordan." She said his name like a hand on a shoulder, and it stopped him. "I'm not asking you to fall in love with me tonight. I'm not asking you to fall in love with me ever. I'm asking you to consider something, and I promise you I've thought about it more clearly than a person who came up with it 4 minutes ago has any right to. Will you let me say it?" He should have left. He wanted to write that down somewhere. Later put it in a letter to his future self. You should have left. But he didn't. He put his hands flat on the table on either side of his daughter's drawing, and he said, "Say it." "I have spent 2 years," Camilla said, "watching men look at me and see a bank account with a fertility problem. Every relationship I try to build, it comes apart on the same rock. They want a certain kind of family, and I can't give them the picture in their head, and the second they realize it, I watch them start planning their exit. Even the good ones. Even the kind ones. I can see it in their eyes, the little recalculation. Is she worth it if she can't give me that?" She shook her head. "And I decided sitting in this restaurant tonight watching you that I am done. Done being weighed. Done being a maybe. Done handing my heart to men who are running a cost-benefit analysis on my body." "Okay," Jordan said carefully. "I hear that. But that's an argument for staying single, not for marrying a—" "There's a little girl," Camilla said, "who already exists, who is loved so completely by her father that a grown woman got up and ran out of a restaurant rather than share a table with the evidence of it." Her voice had changed. It had dropped, gotten quieter, and Jordan felt something turn over in his chest. "That little girl has a mother who's gone, and I have a heart that's got nowhere to put itself. And you have a house where somebody left, where there's an empty side of the bed and a chair nobody sits in, and a whole entire life you built for two that you're carrying by yourself." She stopped. "I'm not talking about romance, Jordan. I'm talking about family. Two people who've each got a hole exactly the shape of what the other one has too much of. I'm asking, could two people like that decide to just choose each other? On purpose, with their eyes open, instead of waiting around to be picked?" Jordan was quiet for a long time. "You want to marry me," he said slowly, "so you can be a mother?" "No." She said it sharply, and then catching herself softer. "No. See, that's exactly the thing, and I need you to hear me, because if you think that's what this is, then it's dead on arrival. I don't want to replace your daughter's mother. I don't want to acquire a child. I had a fiancé who wanted an heir, and I will not turn around and want a kid like a thing to check off a list, because then I'm no better than he was." She took a breath. "I don't want a child. I want a family. There's a difference, and it's the whole difference. A child is a thing you have. A family is a thing you build. And I am so tired of being alone that I would rather try to build one with a decent stranger out in the open, honest, than spend one more year handing my real heart to men who hand it back." The Christmas song had ended. The family in the corner was cutting the grandfather's cake. Somewhere behind the bar, glasses clinked. And Jordan Mitchell sat holding the edges of a table in a restaurant where he'd been humiliated an hour ago, staring at a woman he'd known for less than 10 minutes, and feeling against every ounce of sense he had that she was not crazy. That was the frightening part. She wasn't crazy. "My wife's name was Nia," he heard himself say. Camilla didn't say anything. She just waited, and there was a kind of respect in the way she waited that made his throat tight. "She died 3 years ago. Car accident. It was—" He stopped. He never talked about this. He talked around it at church with his mother, with the grief group he'd gone to twice and never gone back to. He said, "Lost my wife, and it's been hard, and let people fill in the rest." It was a Tuesday. She went out to get milk. That's the whole thing. She went to get milk because we ran out, and Amaya wanted cereal in the morning, and it was raining, and a truck came through a light. He was surprised by how level his voice stayed. "And I have spent 3 years learning that you can love somebody completely, do everything right, be a good husband, be a good father, and the universe can still take it all away between the front door and the corner store." "I'm so sorry," Camilla said. And she said it in a way he could tell she meant not the way people said it to move past it. "So you understand." Jordan said, "Why a man like me isn't exactly in a rush to build anything with anybody. Because I know now. I know what it costs. I know what it's like to be standing in your kitchen at 11 at night with a police officer at your door. I know what it's like to have to tell a 4-year-old that mommy isn't coming home and have her not understand and keep asking for weeks, when's mommy coming back, is mommy at work, and have to break her little heart over and over because she can't hold on to it. His voice finally cracked just slightly on the last word, and he stopped and pressed the back of his hand to his mouth and got himself back. So no, I don't want to lose anybody else. I'd rather be alone forever than stand in another doorway with another police officer. You understand, being alone is safe. I know, Camilla said quietly. I built a whole company so I'd never have to need anybody. Safe is my favorite drug too. They sat with that. But here's the thing about safe, Jordan. She leaned forward. Your daughter, Amaya. She sat there tonight and told you to go on this date so you wouldn't be lonely when she's at school. You told me that. A 7-year-old is worrying about your loneliness. She let that land. You want to talk about what it costs. That's what safe costs. Safe means that little girl grows up believing her whole job is to keep her daddy from being sad. It means she carries you. And someday she's going to be 17 and she's going to want to go away to college or move to a city or fall in love, and she is going to look at you alone in that house, and she is going to feel like she can't leave. Because who'll take care of daddy? Camilla's eyes were fierce now. You think you're protecting her by being alone, but you're not. You're handing her a weight, and the only way you put that weight down is by letting somebody else in, by letting her see that you can be okay, that the family can be more than the two of you white-knuckling it against the world. Jordan stared at her. Because she had, in the space of a minute, said the exact thing he'd never let himself think. The fear underneath. The fear, the one he woke up at 3 a.m. with sometimes and shoved back down before it could take shape. What if Amaya grows up believing she's the reason I can't be happy? What if my grief becomes her cage? Who are you? He said finally, and it wasn't quite a joke. I'm a woman in a restaurant who's about to give you her business card, Camilla said, and then let you go home because you need to go home. I'm not asking you to say yes tonight. God, please don't say yes tonight. I'd think you were unstable. She reached into her bag. I'm asking you to not say no. There's a difference, and it's the whole difference. Take a week. Take a month. Talk to me on the phone like a normal person. Let me buy you a coffee where nobody's crying. And if at any point you decide I'm out of my mind, you block my number, and you never think about me again, and no hard feelings, and I mean that. She slid the card across the tablecloth until it touched the edge of Amaya's drawing. But don't drive home tonight and decide the answer is no forever, just because tonight someone said no. Don't let her. A small nod toward the door Bethany had left through. Get to write the rest of your life. She doesn't get that. She was here for 11 minutes. Jordan looked down at the card. It was cream-colored heavy stock, her name in simple letters. A company name he half recognized from somewhere, an actual phone number written by hand underneath the printed one in ink. You wrote your cell number on there, he said. I did that 10 minutes ago, Camilla admitted. While you were sitting there not looking at anybody. I wrote it and I told myself if the moment came, I'd give it to you, and if it didn't, I'd throw it away in the parking lot and feel like an idiot. And either way, at least I'd have tried something instead of sitting in this booth being sad. She almost smiled. I'm a person who tries things. It's why the company works. Most people wait to be sure. I've learned you're never sure. You just try and you find out. Jordan picked up the card. It felt heavier than it should have. I have to tell you something, he said. And it's not negotiable. And if it's a problem for you, then we can shake hands right now and call it a nice conversation and go our ways. He looked up. Amaya is the center of everything. Not part of it. The center. Anything, anybody that comes into our life, comes in slow and comes in careful and comes in through her. And if she isn't happy, it doesn't happen. I don't care how good it is for me. She has already lost one mother. I will not let her get attached to somebody and then have that somebody decide it's too hard and disappear. She has had enough of people leaving. So whatever this is, whatever you're imagining, it goes at her pace. And if her pace is never, then it's never. And you have to be okay with that going in, or don't call me at all. Camilla was quiet. And then, something happened in her face that Jordan wouldn't be able to describe for a long time afterward, a kind of softening, a kind of relief, like a person who'd been braced for a fight, and instead heard the exact thing they'd been hoping to hear. "Jordan," she said. "That right there. That thing you just said." She shook her head slowly. "That's the whole reason I asked. A man who protects his kid like that, who puts a 7-year-old's heart above his own loneliness. Do you have any idea how rare that is? I've spent my whole life in rooms full of powerful men, and I could count on one hand the ones who'd put somebody else's heart in front of their own comfort, like you just did, without even thinking about it." She stood up, gathered her coat. "Yes, it goes at her pace, slow, careful, through her. If she says never, it's never. I agree to all of it. That's not a compromise for me, that's the point." Jordan stood up too. It seemed like the thing to do. "I'm not saying yes," he said. "I know. I'm not saying no. I know that too." She pulled on her coat, and for a second, she looked less like a woman who ran a company, and more like what she'd told him: she was somebody alone on Christmas Eve who hadn't wanted to go home. "Call me, or don't. But Jordan—" She paused, one hand on the back of her chair. "Whatever you decide. When you get home tonight and you stand in that doorway and watch her sleep, don't you think it? Don't you dare think she's the reason. She's not the reason you're alone. She's the reason you're not. You understand me? A man with a kid who loves him like that is the least alone man in this whole building." And then she did an odd thing. She reached down gently and touched 2 fingers to the corner of Amaya's drawing, the sun, the crayon sun, with too many rays, the way you'd touch something you weren't sure you were allowed to touch. "She drew you brave," Camilla said softly. "Kids know things. Go home to her." Then she picked up her cold coffee, left a bill on the table, and walked out into the Chicago cold. And Jordan Mitchell stood there holding a cream-colored business card in one hand and his daughter's drawing in the other. And for the first time in 3 years, the empty half of his life did not feel like a wound. It felt like a question. He sat back down slowly. The waiter drifted over, cautious, hopeful. Everything okay, sir?" Jordan looked at the card, at the handwritten number, at his daughter's son. "I don't know," he said honestly, and found that he was almost smiling. "I really don't know. Can I get the check?" "That lady already paid it," the waiter said. "Both tables. She said to tell you, hang on. She made me remember it exactly." The kid screwed up his face. "She said, tell him the answer to a bad night isn't a locked door." Jordan let out a long breath. Outside, the snow had started, the fat slow flakes that Amaya loved, the kind she'd press her nose to the window for. He thought about her at his sister's right now, asleep in her Christmas pajamas, one arm thrown over her stuffed rabbit, and how in the morning she'd climb into his lap and ask him in that dead serious 7-year-old way, "So was she nice?" And he thought about what he'd say. An hour ago, the answer would have been the same as every other time: she was fine, baby. It just didn't work out. That's okay, we're okay. We don't need anybody. We've got each other. The little speech he'd perfected, the one that let him keep the door locked. But now, folding the card carefully into his wallet next to a photograph of Nia he'd never been able to take out, Jordan realized he didn't have a speech for this. He didn't have any idea what he was going to say to his daughter in the morning, or whether he was going to call the number, or what he'd even say if he did. All he knew driving home through the falling snow on Christmas Eve was that a total stranger had looked at the wreckage of his night and seen something in it that he'd stopped letting himself see. That the story wasn't over. That maybe it had only, in the strangest possible way, in the last place he'd ever have looked, just begun. He pulled into his sister's driveway. He sat in the car for a minute with the engine ticking as it cooled. Then he took out his phone, and he looked at the number on the card one more time, and instead of calling it, he did the thing that told him everything he needed to know about where his heart already was. He saved it. Camilla Bennett, he typed. And then after a moment, because he was a careful man and an honest one, and because some part of him already suspected this was going to matter, he added 3 more words underneath the name, and looked at them for a long time before he put the phone away and went inside to his daughter. The Christmas Stranger. He didn't call for 11 days. It wasn't that he forgot. A man doesn't forget a stranger asking him to be her husband. It sat in the back of his mind through all of Christmas morning, while Amaya tore into her presents and shrieked over the telescope he'd saved 3 months to buy her, while his mother pressed him about the date over ham and collard greens, and he said only that it didn't work out, and left it there. It sat in his mind while he went back to work at the community college where he taught, while he graded papers at the kitchen table long after Amaya was asleep, while he lay in bed on the side that was still 3 years later, only his half. And when Amaya had climbed into his lap the morning after Christmas and asked dead serious, "So, was she nice?" Jordan had opened his mouth to give the little speech, the "she was fine, baby, it just didn't work out" speech, and found he couldn't. Because it hadn't just not worked out. Something had happened that he didn't have words a 7-year-old could hold. She wasn't very nice, he'd said instead. Honest. He'd promised Nia a long time ago that he'd never lie to their daughter about the things that mattered. But then I met somebody who was. Amaya had considered this with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice. Was she nicer than the first one? A lot nicer. Then why do you look sad? And Jordan hadn't had an answer for that, because being happy is the scariest thing I know wasn't something you said to a child. So, 11 days went by. And on the 11th night after Amaya was asleep, Jordan took out the card and he looked at the handwritten number, and he thought about a woman sitting alone in a restaurant on Christmas Eve, reading the same page of a book over and over because she couldn't make herself go home. And he thought the answer to a bad night isn't a locked door, and before he could talk himself out of it, he typed a message with his thumb hovering over the send button for a full minute. "This is Jordan, from the restaurant, the complicated one." He sent it, and then he sat there feeling like a teenager, his heart going staring at the phone like it might bite him. The 3 dots appeared almost immediately. "I was starting to think you'd blocked me and were living your best life." Jordan laughed out loud alone in his kitchen. Considered it, he typed back, decided the coffee offer was too good to pass up. "Smart man. I know a place. No candlelight, no violins, terrible lighting, best coffee in the city. Nobody there has ever cried in their life." Saturday. He looked at that a long time. Saturday was his day with Amaya, but his mother had been asking to take the girl to the Christmas thing at church, the one with the puppets, and Amaya had been begging. Saturday, he typed, "Morning. I have to be back by noon. Cinderella has a curfew. Noted. I'll have you home before the coach turns into a pumpkin." And that was how, on a gray Saturday morning in early January, Jordan Mitchell found himself sitting across a scarred wooden table from Camilla Bennett in a coffee shop with genuinely terrible lighting, feeling more nervous than he'd felt in years and watching her wrap both hands around a mug like she needed the warmth to keep from floating away. "So," she said, "you came." "I came." "You want to know if I was serious?" "I want to know," Jordan said carefully, "if you were sane. There's a difference." Camilla laughed, and it changed her whole face. In the restaurant, she'd been all sharp edges and steadiness, a woman holding herself together on a night that was falling apart. Here, in the ugly light, she looked younger. Tired around the eyes, but younger. "Fair? Ask me anything. I'll tell you the truth even when it makes me look bad. Especially then. That's the only way this works if it works at all." "Why me?" Jordan turned his own coffee cup a quarter turn on the table and didn't notice he'd picked up her habit. "You run a company. You've got money. You could, I don't mean this the wrong way, you could have your pick. Men would line up. So why are you sitting in a bad coffee shop trying to convince a broke community college professor with a 7-year-old that he should marry you?" "You think I could have my pick," Camilla repeated. There was something dangerous under her voice, quiet and old. "That's the fairy tale. Successful woman, of course men want her." She leaned back. "You want the truth. Men want to win me. There's a difference. I'm a prize to them. A story they get to tell. My wife runs a tech company. My wife's on the cover of the magazine. They want to stand next to it. And then they get close, and they find out that a woman who built something from nothing is a woman with opinions and scars, and a body that doesn't do the one thing they've decided a wife is for, and the shine comes off fast. She wrapped her hands tighter around the mug. I've had 3 serious relationships in 10 years, Jordan. You want to know what ended all 3? Not fights. Not cheating. Every single one ended the exact same way the moment the man realized I was a person and not a trophy, and that the person came with the thing I can't do. I told you about the airline. That was the last one, but it was the same shape every time. They loved the idea of me. None of them loved me. And you think I would? No, she said. I think you're the first man I've met in a decade who doesn't want a trophy. You couldn't care less about my company. When I told you about it in the restaurant, your face didn't change at all. You know that most people, you tell them what I do, there's a flicker. Recalculation. You had nothing. You were too busy being gutted about your kid to care about my bank account. She shook her head slowly. You have no idea how attractive that is. A man who genuinely does not care what I'm worth. Jordan sat with that. You keep coming back to Amaya, he said. In the restaurant. Now. You keep talking about her. And I have to be honest with you, Camila, because I told you it goes through her that scares me. Because I've had women be interested in the idea of my daughter. The instant mom fantasy. And it's always the ones most excited about it up front, who bolt the hardest when it turns out real kids have tantrums and snot and don't love you on schedule. He met her eyes. So I need to understand something, and I need you to not give me the pretty answer. Do you want me, or do you want her? Because if what this really is a woman who can't have a baby looking at a ready-made one, then I need to know that now and walk away now before my daughter ever hears your name. The question hung there. It was a hard question, maybe a cruel one, and Jordan half expected her to flinch from it or dress it up. Instead, Camilla went very still, and then she said, "That's the best question anyone's asked me in years." That's not an answer. I'm getting to the answer. Give me a second because I want to get it right because it's the most important thing I'll say to you. She looked down at her coffee, and when she looked back up, her eyes were wet, and she didn't try to hide it. Here's the honest truth, and it doesn't make me look good, so listen close. When I first said it in the restaurant, some part of me, yes, some ugly little part looked at a man with a daughter and thought there's a family already made all the parts I can't build myself right there. I'd be lying if I said that wasn't in it. And I hate that part of me. Because that's exactly what my fiancé did to me, reduced a whole human being to a function. Wanted me for what I could produce. And here I was doing it right back, looking at your baby like a solution to my problem. Jordan hadn't expected that. He'd expected the pretty answer. He hadn't expected her to hand him the ugly one. But then you said the thing, Camilla went on. In the restaurant. You said she comes in slow, and she comes in through her, and if she says never, it's never. And you have to be okay with that. And Jordan, when you said that, something in me just broke open. Because you weren't protecting your daughter from a bad woman. You were protecting her from me, from the exact ugly thing I'd just been thinking, and you didn't even know it. You were 3 steps ahead of my worst self. And I thought this. This is a man who would never ever let his kid be used as somebody's solution. Not by me, not by anybody. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, impatient with them. So do I want you, or do I want her? I'll tell you the God's honest truth. I don't know yet. I don't know you. But I know I want to be near the thing you have, not the child the way you love the child. That fierceness. That's the thing I've never had in my life, not from my own parents, not from any man. I want to find out if a person can build a family that's made of that. And if the answer's no, if your daughter takes one look at me and says no thank you, then I promise you I will walk away and never make her carry 1 ounce of it. Because a kid who says no to a stranger is a kid doing exactly what she should. That's not rejection. That's a healthy child. Jordan realized he'd been holding his breath. You really thought about this, he said quietly. Jordan, I think about everything. It's a disease. A small wet laugh. But this one I've thought about at 3 in the morning every night for 2 weeks, asking myself if I'm a good person or a desperate one. And I decided I don't have to be sure. I just have to be honest. So there it is. That's the honest one. Was it worth 11 days of not calling? And Jordan, who had spent 3 years being the strong one, the together one, the dad who never let anybody see him crack, surprised himself. "My wife would have liked you," he said. Camilla blinked. I don't know what to do with that." "Neither do I." He rubbed a hand over his face. "It just came out, but it's true. Nia hated fake. Couldn't stand it. Small talk made her itch. She'd have taken one look at you sitting in a restaurant proposing to a stranger on Christmas Eve and said, 'Now that is a woman with the guts to try something.' She was like that. She tried things." His throat worked. "I haven't tried anything in 3 years. I've just been holding the line, keeping us alive, keeping her safe. And you sat there in that restaurant and told me safe was a weight I was handing my daughter, and I've been mad about it for 11 days because I couldn't make it stop being true." They sat there, the two of them, in the terrible light, and something shifted. Not romance. It was too early and too strange for romance. But something more solid than that, something Jordan didn't have a word for until later, when he'd think of it as the first brick. "Okay," Camilla said finally. "So here's what I want to propose. And I promise it's less insane than the last thing I proposed." She set down her mug. "We do this slow, slower than slow. We don't even use the word husband again for a good long while. That was me being dramatic in a restaurant on a bad night, and we can pretend I never said it, or we can keep it as a joke, your call. What I actually want is smaller than that and scarier than that. I want to try. I want to see each other. Talk. Coffee dinners, phone calls, the boring, normal things two grown people do when they're figuring out if there's something there. And nobody meets your daughter until you decide on your own time that there's enough here to risk it. And if that day comes, it goes exactly like you said. Slow. Careful. Through her. She holds the veto. Not me. Not you. Her. She put her hand flat on the table, not quite reaching across it. Those are my terms. I know that's backwards. I'm the one who proposed, and now I'm the one begging to go slow. But I meant what I said. I don't want a solution. I want a family, and you don't build a real one fast. You build it the way you built your company, or your grief, or your relationship with that little girl, one honest day at a time. Deal. Jordan looked at her hand on the table. He thought about Nia, about the police officer in the doorway, about 3 years of a locked door and a 7-year-old who worried about his loneliness, about a telescope and a crayon sun with too many rays and a little girl who'd told him she could come home if the date was mean. He thought about how tired he was of being safe. He put his hand next to hers on the table, not on top of it, next to it, an inch of scarred wood between them. Deal, he said. Slow. Through her. She holds the veto. She holds the veto, Camilla agreed. And then, because she couldn't help herself, even though I'm terrified she's going to use it. I've never been scared of a boardroom in my life, and I am petrified of a 7-year-old. You should be, Jordan said, and for the first time all morning he grinned. She's a hard grader, tougher than me, tougher than her mother was, and Nia was tough. That was the beginning of the slow part. For the next 2 months they built it out of small things. Coffee that turned into breakfast. Phone calls that started at 9 and ran past midnight, the two of them talking in the dark, like teenagers about everything and nothing. Jordan learned that Camilla had grown up poor on the south side, that her mother cleaned houses and her father left when she was 6, that she'd put herself through school on scholarships, and spite, that the company was named after her grandmother. Camilla learned that Jordan had wanted to be a musician before he'd been practical about it, that he still played piano when the house was empty, that he'd met Nia in a college library when they both reached for the same book that he'd proposed to her, broke with a ring he bought on layaway. And the whole time Amaya didn't know Camilla existed. That was the deal, and Jordan held it like a promise. When Camilla called and Amaya was awake, he let it go to voicemail. When they met, it was during school hours or on his mother's Saturdays. He was careful the way he was careful about everything that touched his daughter completely without exception. And Camilla never once pushed. Never asked, "When do I get to meet her?" Never sulked when he chose his kid over a dinner. If anything, Jordan noticed, she seemed to relax more every time he chose Amaya over her. Like each time he did it, it proved something she needed proven. "You know what's funny?" she said one night on the phone, near 2 in the morning, both of them too tired to hang up. "Every man I've ever dated wanted more of me and got mad when he got less. You keep giving me less, you cancel, you cut it short, you disappear for your kid, and it makes me trust you more, not less. That's backwards, right? That's not normal." "It's not backwards," Jordan said. "You've just never dated a man who had somebody who came first. So when I put you second, you know exactly where you stand. There's no games in it. Amaya first, always. Everybody else after." There was a silence on the line. "Second to a 7-year-old, Camilla said softly, "is the safest I've ever felt with a man. Do you have any idea how sad that is?" "Yeah," Jordan said. "I do, actually." The trouble when it came didn't come from Camilla. It came from his own people. It started with his mother. Ruth Mitchell had raised Jordan and his sister on her own after their father passed young, and she'd loved Nia like a daughter. And she had opinions about everything, and she'd noticed. Mothers notice. She noticed her son smiling at his phone. She noticed him humming. She noticed him buy a new shirt. "Who is she?" Ruth said one Sunday after church, not asking. "Who's who, Mama? Boy, I carried you for 9 months and raised you for 36 years. Don't who's who me. Who is she?" So he told her. Not everything, not the restaurant, not the word husband. God knew Ruth wasn't ready for that story, but that he'd met someone. That it was early. That it was good. He watched his mother's face, hoping for joy. He didn't get joy. 3 years, Ruth said quietly. "Mama, 3 years, Jordan. My Nia's been gone 3 years. Her voice wasn't angry. That was the worst part. It would have been easier if it were angry. It was grief raw and fresh, like the wound had never closed. "And you're out buying new shirts and smiling at your phone like she never what?" Jordan felt something go hard and cold in his chest. "Say it! Like she never existed." The words landed like a slap. "That is not fair," Jordan said very low. "That is not fair, Mama, and you know it. I have kept that woman alive in that house every single day for 3 years. I talk about her to Amaya every night. Her pictures are on every wall. I sleep on my half of a bed I can't make myself replace. Do not sit there in your church clothes and tell me I've forgotten Nia. I have forgotten nothing. I remember every second of it, including the part you don't want to think about, which is that she is gone and she is not coming back, and I am still here, and so is her daughter, and we are allowed to keep living." Ruth's eyes filled. "It's too soon." "For who?" Jordan's voice cracked. "For you. Because I'll tell you who it's not too soon for. It's not too soon for a 7-year-old who told me to go on a date so I wouldn't be lonely. It's not too soon for a little girl who's growing up watching her daddy be sad and thinking that's just what love looks like, that it ends, and then you're alone forever. And that's the whole story. Is that what you want her to learn? Mama? That the answer to losing somebody is you lock the door and you stop living. Because that's the lesson I've been teaching her for 3 years, and I just figured out it's the wrong one." His mother didn't answer. She looked down at her hands at the wedding ring she still wore, though Jordan's father had been gone 20 years. And Jordan understood suddenly that this wasn't only about Nia. That some of it was about a woman who'd loved one man and buried him young, and never let herself love again, and had decided somewhere along the way that this was faithfulness. That this was what you owed the dead. "I'm not you, Mama," he said gentler now. "I loved my wife. I will love her till I die, but I am not going to spend the next 40 years alone to prove it. And I don't think Nia would have wanted me to. You knew her. You tell me. You tell me that woman who tried everything, who lived out loud, you tell me she'd want her husband and her baby girl locked in a sad house for the rest of their lives with her picture on the wall. You tell me that's what she'd want, and I'll break it off tomorrow." Ruth was quiet a long, long time. No, she finally admitted, and the word cost her everything. No. Naya would have smacked you upside the head 2 years ago. She'd have said Jordan Mitchell go live. A tear slid down her cheek. That girl never sat still a day in her life. No, she didn't. Ruth's voice broke. I miss her, baby. I miss her so much, and if you move on, then it's really real, Jordan said softly, and came around the table and knelt down in front of his mother, the way he knelt down in front of his daughter, meeting her where she stood. I know, Mama. I know. It doesn't mean we stop missing her. Loving somebody new doesn't take 1 ounce away from Nia. That's not how hearts work. Hearts aren't a pie where somebody else gets a slice and there's less for her. Hearts just get bigger. They make more room. That's the only thing they know how to do. Ruth reached out and put her hand on her son's face. When did you get wise? She whispered. Around 11 o'clock on Christmas Eve, Jordan said. In a terrible restaurant. I'll tell you the story sometime. It's a good one. His mother came around slow. But there were others who didn't, and one of them cut deeper because it came from Nia's side. Nia's brother Darius had been Jordan's closest friend since before the wedding. He was Amaya's godfather. He came by the house one evening in February, and Jordan could tell from the set of his shoulders that his sister had talked, and that talk had traveled, and that this was going to be bad. So it's true, Darius said in the driveway, not even coming inside. You're seeing somebody. Darius, my sister's been dead 3 years and you're already... Don't. Jordan's voice was quiet and hard. Don't you do the same thing my mother did. I already had that fight this month and I'm not having it twice. She was my sister, Jordan. She was my wife. The two of them stood there in the cold breath steaming 2 men who'd loved the same woman in different ways and grieved her in different ways, and were about to find out if the grief could hold them together or was going to tear them apart. You think you're the only one who lost her. You think because she was your blood, you loved her more than the man who married her, who had a child with her, who identified her body. Jordan's voice shook on that last word, and Darius flinched. I've never said that to you. 3 years, I've let you have your grief, and I've carried mine quiet so I didn't burden yours. But don't you dare stand in my driveway and act like I'm dishonoring her. Don't you dare. Darius's jaw worked. How do you know this woman's not just after Amaya's, not some... She doesn't get to just walk in and be Amaya's. She hasn't met Amaya. Jordan cut him off flat. You hear me? 2 months. She has not met my daughter. She has never once asked to. Every single thing about this has gone at my pace, at Amaya's pace, and the day Amaya meets her. If that day comes, Amaya holds the veto, not me, not this woman. So before you stand here and tell me some stranger is going to replace your sister in that little girl's life, you should know I've built a fence around Amaya's heart, taller than anything you could build, and I've been guarding it while you were off having the luxury of just being angry. He stepped closer. I don't have that luxury, Darius. I don't get to just be angry at the world for taking Naya. I've got a kid to raise. Somebody's got to actually live in this house, and I'm doing it as careful as a man can. So you can help me, or you can get out of my driveway, but you cannot stand here and grieve at me like I'm the one who forgot her. For a long moment, Jordan thought Darius would swing on him. He'd have understood it. Grief made men do things. Instead, Darius's face crumpled, and this enormous man, this man who'd carried Nia's casket, put both hands over his face and started to cry in the cold February driveway. And Jordan did the only thing there was to do, which was step forward and put his arms around his brother-in-law and hold him up. I don't want her to be gone, Darius said into Jordan's shoulder, muffled and broken. If you move on, then she's really gone. She's really... I know, Jordan said, holding him. I know, man. I know. She's not gone. She's right here. She's in that kid asleep upstairs who's got her exact laugh. She's never going anywhere. Loving somebody else doesn't move her 1 inch. I promise you, I promise. They stood there at the driveway a long time, 2 men holding each other up under a cold sky, and when Darius finally pulled back and wiped his face, he said rough, She better be good enough for Amaya. She has to get past Amaya first, Jordan said. And Amaya's tougher than both of us. Darius let out a wet laugh. That's the truth. That kid's a hard grader. Everybody keeps saying that, 'cause it's true. Darius wiped his face again, got himself together, looked at his brother-in-law. You really guarding her heart. You're not gonna let some woman come in and break my niece. Darius. Jordan looked him dead in the eye. I would burn the whole thing down and never see this woman again before I'd let anybody put one crack in that little girl. You know that. You know me. And Darius, looking at him, did know. Yeah, he said finally. Yeah, I do. Okay. He blew out a breath. Okay. When you gonna let her meet Amaya? Jordan looked up at the window of his daughter's room, where the light was on, where a 7-year-old was probably supposed to be asleep, and was almost certainly reading under the covers with a flashlight the way her mother used to. Soon, he said quietly, and realized saying it that he meant it. That 2 months of slow had built something solid enough that he was ready to do the terrifying thing to open the fence a crack and let his daughter be the judge and live with whatever she decided. I think it's about time those two met. God help me. God help her, Darius said. Camila, that's her name. Camila. God help Camila, Darius said, and almost smiled. She's got no idea what she's walking into. She didn't, but she was about to find out. He told Amaya on a Thursday night at the kitchen table over homework. He'd rehearsed it a dozen ways and thrown all of them out because Nia's rule still held. You don't lie to the child about the things that matter, and you don't dress the truth up so pretty she can't recognize it. So he set down her math worksheet and said, Baby, I need to talk to you about something grown up. And I need you to be honest with me, even if it's a hard honest. Okay. Amaya put down her pencil and looked at him with those enormous, serious eyes, so much her mother's that it still stopped his heart sometimes. Am I in trouble? No, never. This isn't about you doing anything. He took a breath. You remember how you told me to go on that date at Christmas so I wouldn't be lonely? The mean lady. The mean lady, right. He almost smiled. Well, that night after the mean lady left, I met a nice lady. Her name is Camila, and I've been talking to her. For a while now. On the phone mostly. Getting to know her. Amaya's face did something complicated. A girlfriend. Maybe. Someday. I don't know yet. That's why I'm telling you. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. Here's the thing, Amaya and I need you to really hear me. Nobody comes into our house. Nobody comes into your life unless you're okay with it. You understand? You're not the kid here who just has to go along with what Daddy decides. On this, you get a say. A real one. The biggest one. She frowned, working it. Bigger than yours. On this, yeah. Bigger than mine. He watched her take that in. So I want you to meet her. Just meet her. One time. Someplace fun. No pressure, and if you don't like her, you tell me, and that's the end of it, and I'll never bring her up again, and you're not gonna hurt my feelings, and it's not gonna make me sad, and it's not gonna make you a bad girl. If you say no, it's no. Deal. Amaya was quiet a long time. She picked her pencil back up and turned it over and over in her fingers, the way he turned coffee cups, and Jordan realized with a small ache that she'd learned that from him. Is she gonna try to be my mom? Amaya said finally, not looking up. And there it was. The whole thing in 6 words from a 7-year-old. No, Jordan said. And I already told her she's not allowed to try. You already have a mom. You'll always have a mom. Mommy is mommy, and nobody gets that spot, not ever. Not this lady. Not anybody. That's Nia's spot forever. He reached over and tipped her chin up so she'd look at him. But you know what? You've got a lot of room in your heart, baby. You love me, and you love Grandma, and you love Uncle Marcus and Uncle Darius, and loving all of them doesn't take anything away from loving Mommy, right? Your heart just makes more room. So maybe there's room for a friend. Not a mom, a friend, somebody who's on your team. but only if you decide there is. Okay. Amaya looked at him for a long moment with her mother's eyes. Does she like space? She asked. Jordan blinked. What? Space. Stars and planets and stuff. Because if she's going to be on my team, she has to at least try to like space because that's the most important thing, and I'm not going to be on a team with somebody who thinks space is boring. Jordan started laughing, a helpless, relieved laugh because of all the questions of all the things a 7-year-old could care about his daughter had cut right past the whole grown-up drama of it and gone straight to the thing that actually mattered to her. I don't know, baby, he said honestly. You'll have to ask her yourself. Okay, Amaya said, and picked her pencil back up and went back to her math like she'd just agreed to nothing more significant than a trip to the store. I'll meet her. But I'm asking her about space, and if she lies, I'll know. I believe you, Jordan said. I fully believe you. He called Camilla that night after Amaya was asleep, and told her, and there was a silence on the line so long he thought the call had dropped. Camilla, I'm here. Her voice was strange, thick. Sorry, you're saying she said yes, she'll meet me. She said yes. Saturday if you're free. There's a science museum downtown. They've got a whole space wing planetarium the works. Neutral ground. Something she loves. If it goes bad, we're surrounded by rockets, and she's distracted. And if it goes good, she's going to ask me about space, Camilla said. Isn't she? Oh, she's absolutely going to interrogate you about space. It's the entrance exam. I'd study. There was a wet laugh on the line. Jordan. I have not been this scared since I pitched my company to a room full of investors who wanted to eat me alive. And I wasn't even this scared then. A breath. What if she hates me? What if I say the wrong thing? I run a company with 200 employees and I don't know how to talk to a 7-year-old. You don't talk to her any different than you talk to me, Jordan said. That's the whole secret. Kids can smell fake from a mile off, worse than adults, way worse. Amaya especially. You try to perform for her, you try to be fun, nice lady. She'll clock it in about 4 seconds, and it's over. Just be a person. Be honest. If you don't know something, say you don't know. If she asks you something hard, don't dodge it. She's tougher than she looks, and she respects the truth more than she respects nice. Be honest, Camilla repeated. Don't perform, don't dodge. And Camilla. Jordan hesitated. One more thing. The space stuff. Do not fake it. I'm serious. If you don't actually care about space, do not pretend you do to win her over, because she asked me point blank if you'd lie about it, and she said, and I quote, if she lies, I'll know. And she will. So if you think space is boring, just tell her the truth. Tell her you don't know much about it, but you'd like to learn. She can work with that. What she can't work with is a grown-up lying to her face to get something. That's the one unforgivable thing in her book. She got that from her mother. There was a silence. I don't have to fake it, Camilla said quietly. No, Jordan. I grew up on the South Side with a mother who worked 2 jobs and no money for anything. You know what was free? The library. And you know what was free at the library? Books about space. I used to check out the same beat-up book about the planets over and over, because it was the one place I could go where the problems were bigger than mine. Where being poor and scared didn't matter because the whole thing was so big. Her voice had gone soft and far away. I wanted to be an astronomer. Before I was practical about it. Before I figured out that people like me became engineers, if we were lucky, and built companies, if we were very lucky. But before all that, when I was 7 years old, Jordan, when I was exactly her age, I wanted to touch the stars more than I've ever wanted anything. Jordan sat very still in his dark kitchen. You're not going to have to fake it at all, he said. No, Camilla said. I'm not. Saturday came gray and cold. Jordan brought Amaya to the museum early before Camilla on purpose, so his daughter would have home field advantage, so she'd be the one already there when the stranger arrived, and not the other way around. He'd thought about all of it. He'd lain awake thinking about all of it. He got Amaya a hot chocolate, and they stood in the great echoing lobby under a hanging model of the solar system, and Amaya held his hand tight, and he realized she was nervous too. You okay, baby? What if I don't like her? Amaya whispered. Then you'll be sad. And there it was again, the weight. The exact weight Camilla had named in the restaurant 3 months ago. His 7-year-old standing in a museum lobby worried about his feelings instead of her own. Jordan crouched down to her level. Amaya, look at me. He waited till she did. I want you to forget about my feelings, completely. For today, I don't have feelings. You're the only one with feelings today. Your only job is to figure out what you think. Not what'll make me happy, not what'll make her happy. Just do you like her, yes or no? That's it. That's your whole job. Can you do that for me? Amaya nodded slowly. And whatever you decide, Jordan said. I promise you on. I promise you on, Mommy, it will not make me sad. Okay. That's the biggest promise there is, and I'm making it. On, Mommy. Amaya's eyes went wide because she knew what that promise meant, that it was the one they never made lightly. On, Mommy, she repeated. On, Mommy. Now drink your hot chocolate, and let's go look at Saturn while we wait. Camilla arrived 10 minutes later, and Jordan watched her come across the lobby and saw immediately that she'd taken every word of his advice. She wasn't dressed up. She wasn't wearing the armor she wore for the world. She had on jeans and a plain sweater, and she looked for once like a regular person, and she'd left the expensive watch at home, and she was carrying, Jordan almost laughed, a small worn paperback book. She came up to them, and she didn't kneel down and get in Amaya's face the way nervous adults do. She didn't put on the high, bright voice. She just stopped a respectful distance away and gave a little wave and said, Hi, you must be Amaya. I'm Camilla. Your dad talks about you all the time. It's a lot, honestly. It's mostly about you. And then she looked around at the museum and said, I haven't been here since I was a kid. I forgot how good it is. Amaya studied her. The famous interrogation stare. Jordan held his breath. Do you really like space? Amaya said. Flat, testing. Or are you just saying that because my dad told you I love it? And this was the moment. Jordan had told Camilla it would come, and here it was, and everything hung on the next 10 seconds, and he watched Camilla crouch down slowly at a distance, not crowding, so she was at Amaya's eye level. I'm going to tell you the truth, Camilla said, because your dad told me you can always tell when a grown-up is lying, and I believe him. Here's the truth. I actually do love space, but I understand why you'd think I might just be saying that. So I'm not going to tell you I love it. I'm going to show you, and then you can decide for yourself. She held up the worn paperback. This is the book I read when I was 7 years old, your exact age. My mom didn't have money for toys, so I used to check this same book out of the library over and over. It's about the planets. It's really old, and it's got some stuff in it that turned out to be wrong, because they've learned a lot since then. But I want you to have it. Not because I'm trying to buy you or make you like me. You don't have to like me at all. When your dad said you loved space, I dug this out of a box and I thought she should have it. Because I know what it's like to be 7 and want to touch the stars. Amaya took the book. She opened it. Jordan watched his daughter's face and couldn't breathe. This is Pluto, Amaya said, pointing at a page suspicious. It says Pluto's a planet. Pluto's not a planet anymore. They kicked it out. They did. Camilla agreed, grave. In 2006, it got demoted to a dwarf planet. Broke my heart, honestly. I still think it's a planet. Don't tell the scientists. Amaya looked up sharply. You think Pluto's still a planet? I think, Camilla said, that Pluto has been out there minding its own business for 4.5 billion years, being exactly the same thing it always was. And then one day, a bunch of grown-ups in a room voted to call it a different name. And that didn't change one single thing about Pluto. It's the same rock it always was, so the grown-ups can call it whatever they want. In my heart, it's a planet. There was a silence. And then Amaya, Jordan's careful, guarded, hard-grading daughter, said, In my heart, it's a planet too. In a voice of such fierce agreement that Jordan had to turn away for a second and press the back of his hand to his mouth. You want to go see the Saturn model? Amaya said. It's got the rings and everything, and if you push a button, it tells you how many moons, and it's a lot. It's like way more than you think. It's 100 and something now, isn't it? They keep finding more. 146. Amaya said, scandalized with delight that this grown-up knew, grabbing Camilla's hand, grabbing her hand and towing her toward the space wing. And Jordan stood alone in the lobby, holding a cold hot chocolate, and watched his daughter drag a woman he'd met in a restaurant toward a model of Saturn. Both of them talking a mile a minute, and something happened in his chest that he didn't have a name for and didn't want to name, because naming it would make it too big to survive. His phone buzzed. A text from Darius. "Well, how's it going?" Jordan looked up. Across the museum, Camilla was crouched next to Amaya at the Saturn display, and Amaya was pushing the button, and both of them were leaning in to hear the number, and Amaya said something, and Camilla threw her head back and laughed a real laugh, the unguarded kind, and Amaya laughed too, that wide-open gap-toothed laugh, her mother's laugh, and for a second the two of them looked like they'd known each other for years. Jordan typed back with a thumb that wasn't quite steady. "She likes space, Darius. She actually likes space. So is that good?" Jordan looked at the two of them by the Saturn model. It's everything he typed. It's the whole ball game. That was the beginning of the part Jordan would look back on later as the good months. He'd been braced for it to be hard for Amaya to test and retreat, and test again for the 2 steps forward, 1 step back that everyone warned him about. And there was some of that. But mostly there was something he hadn't dared hope for, which was ease. Camilla never pushed. That was the thing. She never tried to be mom, never tried to buy Amaya's love, never overstayed, never made Jordan choose between them. She came into their lives the exact way he'd asked her to, slow, careful through the child, and she let Amaya set the pace of everything. When Amaya wanted her around, she was around. When Amaya wanted her dad to herself, Camilla made herself scarce without being asked, without sulking, without making it a thing. She read the kid like she read a boardroom, Jordan thought, except with tenderness instead of strategy. She started showing up to things, small things. She came to Amaya's science fair. Amaya did a project on the phases of the moon, and it won 2nd place, and Camilla stood in the back so as not to crowd and clapped so hard Jordan thought she'd hurt herself. She learned that Amaya liked her sandwiches cut in triangles, not squares, and remembered it. She learned that Amaya got scared during thunderstorms, and that the thing that helped was not telling her it was okay, but explaining exactly what was happening in the clouds, the science of it, because facts were the thing that made Amaya feel safe. She figured that out on her own. Jordan hadn't told her. She just watched and listened and remembered, and that he was learning was the whole of what Camilla Bennett had to offer a person, and it turned out to be almost everything. "She helped me with my homework," Amaya reported one night, matter-of-fact brushing her teeth. "The fractions. She's actually really good at math. Better than you, Daddy, no offense." "None taken," Jordan said. "She builds computers for a living. I teach community college." She said fractions are just a fancy way of writing division, and once she said that it made sense. Amaya spit. "How come you never said that?" "I'll be honest, baby, I didn't know that." Amaya gave him a look of profound 7-year-old pity. "It's okay, Daddy. Not everybody can be good at everything." And Jordan laughed and thought, this is working. This is actually working. I don't believe it, but it's working. Camilla became the person Amaya called. That was the thing that told Jordan how deep it had gone. When Amaya finished a new drawing she was proud of, she wanted to show Camilla. When she learned a new fact about space, she wanted to tell Camilla. One night when Jordan was grading papers, he heard Amaya on the phone in the other room. She'd asked to call Camilla herself, dialed it herself, saying, "And then the teacher said Jupiter has a storm that's bigger than the whole Earth, and it's been going for 300 years. Did you know that?" And Camilla's voice tinny through the phone saying, "The Great Red Spot. I love the Great Red Spot." Okay, here's the crazy part. It's actually been shrinking. They think it might. And Jordan set down his pen and sat there in the dark and listened to a woman he'd met in a restaurant talk to his daughter about a storm on Jupiter at 8 o'clock on a school night. And he thought, Nia, are you seeing this? Is this okay? Please let this be okay." He didn't get an answer. He never did. But sitting there listening to his daughter's delighted voice, he felt something that was as close to permission as he was ever going to get. But easy months make a person forget. And Jordan, who had learned 3 years ago exactly how fast everything can turn, had let himself forget. He'd started to relax, started to believe, started to think that maybe he could have this, that maybe the universe had decided to give something back after all it had taken. And then, on a Saturday, when Amaya was staying at Camilla's place for the first time, a real milestone, an overnight Amaya's idea. She'd wanted to see Camilla's apartment, and Camilla had a whole telescope on the balcony she'd bought for these visits. Jordan's phone rang at 9 at night, and it was Camilla, and her voice was wrong. "Jordan." Tight, controlled, but barely. "Don't panic, she's okay. But Amaya's running a fever. It came on fast. It's 102. She threw up and she's crying and she's asking for—" Jordan was already standing, already had his keys, already halfway out the door before Camilla finished the sentence, and his heart was doing the thing it hadn't done in 3 years. The ice water thing, the phone call at night thing, the police officer in the doorway thing, and every rational part of his brain knew a fever was nothing. Kids got fevers, it was fine, and none of that mattered at all. Because the animal part of him, the part that had lost Nia between the front door and the corner store, was already screaming. "I'm coming," he said. "I'm coming right now. Don't move her. I'm coming." "Jordan, she's fine. It's just a fever. You don't have to." But he'd already hung up. He was already in the car. He was already driving too fast through the dark, gripping the wheel, and somewhere underneath the fear buried, but real, was a thought he wouldn't recognize until much later as the thing that nearly broke everything he'd built. Something happened to her and I wasn't there. She was with somebody else, and something happened and I wasn't there. He didn't know yet that in his panic, in his rush through the door, in the way he'd say the next few things, he was about to make Camilla Bennett feel like the one thing she'd spent 3 months proving she wasn't. Temporary. He got there in 11 minutes. It should have taken 20. Camilla had the door open before he reached it. She must have been watching from the window, and he pushed past her without a word, without a look, straight down the hall, toward the sound of his daughter's voice, and he didn't see the way Camilla's hand came up as if to touch his arm, and then dropped. Didn't see her face as he went by, like she wasn't even there. Amaya was on the couch, wrapped in a blanket that wasn't hers. Her cheeks flushed and her eyes glassy, and when she saw him, she started to cry harder. The way kids do the second they see the parent. They've been holding it together for. And Jordan dropped to his knees and gathered her up and pressed his lips to her forehead to feel the heat of it himself, because he didn't trust anyone else's hand, not even a thermometer. He had to feel it himself. "I'm here, baby daddy's here, I've got you." He was already checking her over with his hands, her neck behind her ears, the animal inventory a parent does. "How you feeling, huh? Camilla said you threw up." "My tummy hurts," Amaya sobbed into his shirt. "And I'm hot, but I'm cold." I know. That's what a fever feels like. It's okay. It's just a bug. You're gonna be okay." He looked up and Camilla was standing in the doorway of her own living room, and he said sharp, not thinking, "How long has she been like this? What did she eat? Did you give her anything?" "Children's Tylenol 20 minutes ago, the dose for her weight I checked." Camilla's voice was careful. Too careful. She had pasta for dinner, plain nothing new. She was fine at 7 playing with the telescope, and then at 8:30 she said her stomach hurt, and it came on fast, Jordan. I called you the second she threw up. I didn't wait. You should have called me the second her stomach hurt. The words came out of him flat and cold, and he didn't hear how they landed. He was already looking back down at Amaya, feeling her forehead again, and he didn't see Camilla flinch like she'd been struck. Camilla started. "It was a stomachache. Kids get stomach aches. I didn't want to." "She's 7. Jordan didn't look up. "You call me the second anything's wrong. Anything. That's the whole deal. That's the only deal." He was pulling the blanket tighter around his daughter, lifting her, gathering her up against his chest. "I'm taking her home. Jordan, it's 9:30, moving her when she's already sick and scared. Maybe she should be home." He said it with a finality that closed the subject, and he still didn't look at Camilla. All his attention was on the child. And that was the thing. That was the exact thing. Every ounce of him had gone to Amaya. And there was nothing left over. Not a glance, not a word for the woman who'd been sitting with his sick daughter for the last hour, holding her hair back, wiping her face, calling him with a steady voice while her own hands shook. "Where are her shoes? Where's her bag?" "By the door. I packed it already. Camilla stopped. "I put a change of clothes in there in case she got sick again in the car. And a plastic bag. And there's a water bottle cold. She should sip it, small sips, not big ones, or it'll come back up." Jordan registered none of it. "Okay, thanks." 2 words thrown over his shoulder, already walking. "Say bye to Camilla, baby." "Bye, Camilla," Amaya mumbled into his neck, miserable. "Bye, sweetheart," Camilla said, and her voice did something on the word cracked almost invisibly, and Jordan didn't catch it, because he was already at the door, already juggling the child and the bag, and his keys already gone in his head, and he pulled the door open and carried his daughter out into the night, without once, not one single time, looking back at the woman standing alone in the middle of her living room, in the wreckage of an evening. She'd tried so hard to make perfect, holding a folded blanket against her chest, like it was the only thing keeping her upright. He didn't call her that night. He was up till 3 with Amaya. The fever breaking around 1, the vomiting, stopping the child finally sleeping, sprawled across his chest the way she had when she was a baby. He texted at 3 a.m. Fever broke. "She's asleep. Thanks for calling me." And that was it. That was all. Thanks for calling me, like she was a neighbor who'd reported a package left on the porch. Camilla didn't answer. He noticed dimly in the exhausted haze of the night that she didn't answer, but he was too wrung out to think about it, and he told himself she was probably asleep, and he fell asleep himself, with his daughter's heartbeat under his hand. Amaya was better by morning. Kids are like that, flattened one night, bouncing the next. By 10, she was demanding cereal and cartoons and asking when she could go back to Camilla's because she hadn't gotten to use the telescope for the moon, and Camilla promised. Jordan made her toast and told her soon, and it wasn't until early afternoon, when the adrenaline had finally drained, and he was sitting at the kitchen table with coffee, that he looked at his phone and saw that Camilla still hadn't answered his 3 a.m. text, and something cold turned over in his stomach that had nothing to do with fever. He called her. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. He texted, "Hey, she's all better, eating me out of house and home. You okay?" The 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Then after a long time, "I'm glad she's feeling better. Give her a hug from me." That was all. No warmth in it. No "thank God" or "I was so worried" or any of the 1,000 things Camilla usually said. Just 11 flat words, and Jordan sat looking at them, and the cold thing in his stomach spread. He called again. This time she answered. "Hey," he said. "You've been weird since last night. What's going on?" There was a silence on the line. "Nothing's going on," Camilla said. "I'm glad Amaya's okay. That was scary. I've never had a kid get sick on my watch before. I handled it wrong, and I'm sorry." "You didn't handle it wrong. You said I should have called you the second her stomach hurt." Jordan closed his eyes. "Camilla, I was scared. I say things when I'm—" "No, you were right. You were completely right. She's your daughter, and I should have called you immediately, and I didn't. I waited. I made a judgment call I had no business making, and I'm sorry. It won't happen again." Her voice was doing something terrible. It was calm. It was reasonable. It was completely dead. I think it's good this happened, honestly. It showed me something. It showed me where I actually stand, and that's useful. It's better to know." "Where you actually stand? What are you talking about?" "I have a call in 20 minutes, Camilla said. "Work thing. I have to prep. I'll talk to you later." "Okay, I really am glad she's better." And she hung up. Camilla Bennett, who had never once in 3 months hung up on him, who used to stay on the phone till 2 in the morning, because neither of them could bear to be the one to end it, hung up on him. Jordan sat there with the dead phone in his hand, and for the first time felt fear of a completely different kind than the fear from the night before. That fear had been old and familiar, the fear of losing a child. This one was newer, and he didn't have as much practice with it. This was the fear of losing something he'd only just let himself have. He didn't call back that day. He gave her space, told himself she was tired, told himself the fever night had rattled them both. But 3 days went by, and Camilla didn't call. In 3 months, she'd never gone more than a day. She answered his texts, but short, flat, correct the texts of a woman doing the minimum required not to be accused of ignoring him. When Amaya asked to call her, Camilla answered and was warm with the child, sweet, fully present, and then the second Amaya handed the phone back to Jordan, the warmth switched off like a light, and she'd say she had to go. By the 4th day, he couldn't take it. He asked his mother to watch Amaya, and he drove to Camilla's apartment, and he stood outside her door and knocked, and when she opened it and saw him, her face closed up like a fist. "Jordan, what are you doing here? We need to talk. And you keep hanging up on me, so I came where you can't hang up on me." She stood in the door, not moving to let him in. "There's nothing to talk about." "There's clearly everything to talk about." He put his hand flat on the doorframe. "Camilla, 4 days ago we were good. We were so good. My daughter is calling you to tell you about Jupiter. And then she got a fever, and now you won't look at me. So something happened, and I don't know what it is, and I'm not leaving until you tell me, because I have spent 3 years learning that when you let something rot in silence, you lose it, and I am not losing this without at least knowing why." For a moment, he thought she'd closed the door on him. Then something in her face broke just slightly, and she stepped back and let him in. Her apartment was immaculate the way it always was, except for one thing. The blanket, the one she'd wrapped Amaya in, was folded on the arm of the couch, and Jordan had the strange thought that she hadn't put it away in 4 days, that she'd left it out where she could see it. She didn't sit down. She stood by the window with her arms crossed, holding herself, and he stayed by the door, and the distance between them was the whole apartment. "Talk to me," Jordan said. "You want to know what happened." Camilla's voice was very controlled. "Okay, I'll tell you what happened. 4 nights ago, your daughter got sick in my home. And I did everything right, Jordan. I checked the dose. I called you the second she threw up. I sat with her and held her hair and told her funny stories about space to keep her from crying. And I kept my voice steady on the phone with you, even though I was terrified because I thought this is my job now. This is what it means to be part of this. You stay calm for the kid." Her jaw was tight. "And then you got here. And you walked past me like I was a piece of furniture. You didn't look at me, not once. You interrogated me. How long? What did she eat? Did you give her anything? Like I was a suspect, like I'd done something to her. And then you picked her up, and you took her, and you left, and you never once." Her voice cracked, and she stopped and pressed her lips together hard and looked out the window. "I was scared," Jordan said quietly. "Camilla, my wife died. When the phone rings at night, and it's about my kid, I know your wife died." She spun around, and now the control was gone. Now it was pouring out of her. "I know, Jordan. I have held that knowledge like it was made of glass for 3 months. Every single thing I have done around the shape of your dead wife. I never pushed to meet Amaya faster because I knew. I never asked you to say you loved me because I knew. I let you keep her picture on every wall, and I never once felt jealous because I understood. I built my whole self around being careful of your wound." Tears were coming now, and she didn't wipe them. "But do you know what it did to me standing in my own living room, having sat with your sick child for an hour, having done everything right, and watching you look straight through me like I was nothing? Like the second something actually mattered, the second it was real and scary. I stopped being a person to you and went back to being a stranger from a restaurant. It's exactly what happened." Her voice broke fully now. "You showed me Jordan. In that one moment you showed me the truth of the whole thing, and I've been sick about it for 4 days. When everything's easy, I'm your girlfriend, you're maybe something, the nice lady who likes space. But the second it gets hard, The second there's real fear, real stakes, a real emergency. I don't exist. I'm not family. I'm not even a person in the room. You close ranks. It's you and Amaya, the two of you against the world, exactly the way it's been for 3 years, and there is no room in that, Jordan. There's no room for me. You built a wall around the two of you, and you let me stand next to it, and I mistook standing next to the wall for being inside it. She wiped her face hard with the heel of her hand. I told you at the very beginning, in the restaurant. I told you I was done being the person men trust only when it's convenient. And I let myself believe you were different. And then your daughter spikes a fever, and you show me I'm exactly that. I'm the good times woman. I'm not the one you turn to when it's bad. I'm the one you turn away from. Jordan opened his mouth and nothing came out. Because she was right. That was the thing that stopped his heart in his chest, standing there in her immaculate apartment with the blanket folded on the couch. She was right, and he could see it now. Could see the whole night from the outside, could see himself pushing past her, interrogating her. Taking his daughter and leaving without a backward glance, texting, "Thanks for calling me at 3 a.m., like she was a stranger who'd done him a favor. He'd been so deep in his own fear, so far down, the old familiar hole of something happened to my child, and I wasn't there, that he'd taken the one person who'd sat with his daughter and held her hair back and treated her like she was in the way. "Oh my God," he said quietly. "Camila, oh my God. Don't. No, let me." He took a step toward her, and she took a step back, and he stopped. "You're right. Everything you just said is right. I did that. I walked past you. God, I made you feel like after you sat with her for an hour." He pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes. "I have to tell you what was happening in my head, not because it's an excuse. It's not an excuse, but so you understand, because you deserve to understand." When the phone rang, and it was about Amaya Camila. The last time I got a phone call at night about someone I love, it was the hospital telling me my wife was dead. Do you understand? That's the wiring. That's what's under there. The phone rings at night. Somebody I love is hurt, and I go somewhere. I go all the way back to the worst night of my life, and I'm barely a person. I'm just terror with a body. And in that state, there was room for exactly one thing in my whole mind, and it was getting to my kid and putting my hands on her and making sure she was breathing. And everything else in the universe disappeared, including you. And you're right, that's the problem. That's exactly the problem. "It's not that you did it once," Camila said, and her voice was quieter now, exhausted. "People panic. I could forgive panic. It's what it showed me, Jordan. It's that when the chips are truly down, your circle is 2 people wide, and it always has been, and I'm not in it, and I'm never going to be in it because you built it before I ever showed up and it's welded shut. And I can't—" Her voice went thin. "I can't spend years being the woman whose family, when it's fun and furniture, when it's real. I did the math on it lying awake for 4 nights. And I would rather walk away now while it's only me who's hurt than let Amaya get 1 year older loving me and then have you decide the next time it's really scary that I'm not part of this after all. Because she's the one who can't afford it. She's already lost one." Camila stopped. "I won't be the second woman that little girl loses. I'd rather go now." "No," Jordan said. It came out of him hard and immediate. "No, absolutely not. You don't get to do that." "Jordan, no. You listen to me now because I listened to you and you were right about all of it, and I own every word, but you just said one thing that is wrong, and I'm not going to let it stand because it's the exact same poison you warned me about in the restaurant." He crossed the room, and this time when she stepped back, he kept coming gently until he could take both her hands, and she let him barely. "You said you're not in the circle. You said I built it 2 people wide and welded it shut. And I understand why you think that after the other night. But Camila, look at me. Look at me." She did. "The circle isn't welded shut. It's scarred shut. There's a difference, and it's the whole difference you taught me that phrase in the restaurant, and I'm giving it back to you. It's not that I don't want you inside. It's that the last time I let the circle be 3 people wide, one of them died and it nearly killed me. And it did nearly kill Amaya. And some animal part of me decided, never again keep it small. Keep it 2. 2 is survivable. 3 is how you get destroyed. That's not a wall against you. That's a wall against losing again. And it's a bad wall. And it's hurting the people I love. And I built it out of fear. And you are the first person in 3 years who's made me want to tear it down. Beep. Mafirindiyad. Camilla's hands were shaking in his. You say things, she whispered. You say beautiful things. But then the fever comes and you... Then I fail? Jordan said. Yeah, I failed the other night. I'm going to fail again, probably because I've got 3 years of bad wiring and it doesn't undo in a day. But here's what I'm asking you. Don't measure me by the moment I panicked. Measure me by what I do after. Because a man who never fails isn't real, Camilla. There's no such man. But a man who fails and then comes to your door and stands there and says, you're right. I did that. Teach me how to do better. That man is real, and that man is standing in your living room and he is not leaving. He tightened his grip on her hands. You want to know the truth. You want to know how deep in the circle you already are. When the fever broke at 1 a.m. and Amaya finally fell asleep on my chest. You know what my very first thought was before I even texted you. My first thought was, I have to tell Camilla. Camilla will be so relieved. You were the first person I wanted to tell. Not my mother. Not Darius. You. Because somewhere in the last 3 months, without me even noticing, you became the person I turned to. The other night I turned away from you because I was drowning, and I grabbed the only log I've held onto for 3 years, which is Amaya. But the second I could breathe again, I reached for you. That's not furniture, Camilla. That's not the good times woman. That's family. I did it clumsy. I did it scared. I did it like a man who's forgotten how. The tears were streaming down her face, now silent. I sat with her hair, Camilla said, and her voice broke completely, and the whole controlled surface finally shattered, and out of it came the thing that was really underneath the thing under the thing. I held her hair while she was sick, and I thought this is what a mother does. Nobody ever let me. I can't ever have. And there I was holding her hair, and for 1 hour I got to feel like, and then you walked in and took her, and looked through me, and I thought, of course. Of course. This isn't yours. You don't get this. You were never going to get this. You're a woman who can't have children sitting in an empty apartment, borrowing somebody else's family for a night, and you let yourself forget for 1 hour. And here's the universe reminding you. She was sobbing now, and Jordan pulled her in, and she let him finally her face against his chest, in the same spot Amaya's had been 4 nights ago. That's what it did to me, Jordan. It wasn't just that you ignored me. It's that you ignored me, and it woke up the whole broken thing. The fiancé, the heir. You can't give me a family, all of it, in one look. You made me feel like I'd been stupid to think I could ever really belong to anybody. And Jordan Mitchell, holding this woman who had walked into the wreckage of his worst night and asked him to be her husband, understood at last exactly what he'd done, and exactly what was at stake, and exactly how close he'd come to breaking something that could not be replaced. Listen to me, he said into her hair, holding her tight. Listen. Are you listening? He waited until she nodded against his chest. You did not borrow my family for a night. You are not a woman who can't have a family. That's the old poison talking, that's the fiancé's voice that's not true, and it was never true. You want to know what's true. 4 nights ago, my daughter got sick and she was scared. And you know what she did? Before I got there, she let you comfort her. You. A woman she's known for 3 months. She let you hold her hair and wipe her face and tell her stuff about space to calm her down. And Camilla, that kid does not let people do that. She didn't let my mother do that. When she had the flu last year, she screamed for me the whole time. But she let you. Do you understand what that means? That kid that guarded careful, hard-grading kid who lost her mother? She looked at you in the middle of being sick and scared, and some part of her decided this person is safe. This person can take care of me. That is not borrowing a family. That is a child choosing you. And she chose you before I did. She was braver than me. She let you into the circle 4 nights ago, and then her scared father showed up and slammed the door. And I am so sorry, and I am opening it back up right now, and I am asking you. He pulled back so he could look at her both hands on her wet face. Do not let my one bad night convince you of the thing you've believed your whole life, because it's a lie. You are not too broken to belong. You belong. You belong to that kid, and you belong to me. And the only person who ever said otherwise was a man who wasn't fit to be in the same room as you. And I refuse. I refuse to be the second man who makes you believe you're unlovable. I'd rather cut off my own hand. Camilla was crying too hard to speak. She just gripped his wrists and shook her head, not in refusal, in overwhelm. In the particular way a person shakes their head when someone has finally said the exact thing they've needed to hear for their entire life and don't know how to receive it. I mean it, Jordan said. You are not helping me raise my daughter Camilla. Get that out of your head. You are not the nice lady who assists. You are not temporary, and you are not furniture, and you are not a good times woman. You are... His own voice broke now finally, 3 years of held together cracking open. You are part of raising her. You're part of this family. You held her hair. You're the one she wanted to tell about Jupiter. She keeps your book by her bed. Did you know that? The planet book? It's on her nightstand, and she reads it every night, and she told me she's not allowed to bend the pages because it's Camilla's. You're not a replacement for anybody, and you're not a stranger from a restaurant, and you're not borrowing anything. You're family. And I did a terrible job of showing you that 4 nights ago, and I will spend as long as it takes doing a better job if you'll let me, if you'll just please. Please don't go. Don't decide you're unlovable in my living room. Not you. Not you of all the people in the world. For a long moment Camilla just cried and Jordan held her and neither of them said anything. And the blanket sat folded on the couch where she'd left it for 4 days, because she couldn't bear to put it away. Then finally, muffled against his chest, she said, She really keeps the book by her bed. On her nightstand. Reads it every night. Won't let me bend the pages. A sound came out of Camilla that was half sob and half laugh. It's got Pluto in it. Pluto's not even a planet. In her heart, it's a planet, Jordan said. You told her that. Now it's the law in our house. We had to have a whole discussion about it. She informed my mother at Sunday dinner that Pluto is a planet, and when my mother said the scientists disagreed, Amaya said, and here Jordan did his daughter's voice dead serious. Camilla says the scientists can call it whatever they want, it's the same rock it always was. And my mother looked at me like, who is this Camilla, and why is she running my grandchild's astronomy curriculum? And Camilla laughed for real this time, a wet, broken, helpless laugh, her face still against his chest, and Jordan felt the laugh go through her body and knew the way. You know these things that they'd come through it. Not because the words had been perfect, but because he'd come to the door. Because he'd stayed. Because he'd failed, and then shown up anyway. Which was he was learning the only thing love actually was not the never failing, but the showing up after. I'm still scared, Camilla said, finally pulling back, wiping her face, looking at him. I want to be honest, because that's our whole thing, honesty. That night broke something, and it's not going to unbreak because you said beautiful words. I'm going to be watching next time it's hard. I'm going to be looking to see if you close the door again. I can't help it. That's my wiring, same as the phone at night is yours. Good, Jordan said. Watch. I want you to watch. Because I'm going to keep the door open, and I'd rather you see me do it than have to take my word for it. He took her hands again. We both come with broken wiring. That's not a reason to walk away. That's Camilla. That's the whole reason it works. You know why the woman in the restaurant walked out on me? Because my life was too complicated. Because I came with too much. And you know why you and me works? Because we're both too complicated. We both come with too much. Two broken people who found each other is not a weaker thing than two whole ones. It's stronger, because we know. We know what it costs. Neither of us is going to be careless with it because we both remember exactly what it feels like to be thrown away. Camilla looked at him for a long, long moment. When did you get wise? She said, echoing his mother without knowing it. Around 9:34 nights ago, Jordan said. When I did the stupidest thing I've done since Nia died, and it scared me so bad I finally figured some things out. He squeezed her hands. Come back, please. Come to dinner tomorrow. Amaya's been asking for you every day. She wants to show you she's better. She wants to do the moon with the telescope. She's been devastated you haven't called. Come home. Come home. The words landed, and Jordan heard himself say them, and realized he'd meant them exactly as they sounded, that somewhere in the last 3 months, his house had stopped being a place that only he and Amaya lived, and had become a place with a Camilla-shaped space in it, a space that had been aching empty for 4 days. Camilla heard it too. He saw her hear it. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll come home. And when she said home, something in both of them settled the way a bone settles back into its socket, painful and right all at once. She came to dinner the next night, and Amaya, when she opened the door and saw her, made a sound of pure 7-year-old joy and threw herself at Camilla's legs and wrapped around them and said, You didn't call me for a week. I thought you didn't like me anymore. I got better. I want to show you the moon. It's a crescent tonight, which is my second favorite. And Camilla got down on her knees right there in the doorway and hugged the child and looked up at Jordan over Amaya's shoulder with tears standing in her eyes. And Jordan mouthed the words, I'm sorry and thank you and stay, and Camilla nodded and held his daughter and stayed. Later that night, after Amaya was in bed after they'd done the moon with the telescope on the back porch, and Amaya had made Camilla promise 14 times that she wasn't going to disappear again. Jordan and Camilla stood in the kitchen washing dishes side by side, and it was so easy, so ordinary, so much like a life that Jordan had to stop for a second with a plate in his hand and just breathe through it. What? Camilla said, catching him. Nothing, just... He shook his head. 2 coffee cups. What? He nodded at the drying rack where 2 mugs sat side by side. For 3 years there was 1 coffee cup in the morning. 1. I'd make 1 cup and stand at that counter and drink it alone before Amaya woke up, and it was the loneliest part of every single day. His voice was rough. There's 2 cups now. Your books are on the shelf in the living room. There's a second toothbrush. It happened so slow I didn't even see it happening. And then 4 nights ago I almost threw it all away in one stupid panicked hour, and I keep thinking about how close I came. He set the plate down. I don't want to drink coffee alone anymore, Camilla. That's the plainest way I know how to say it. I did it for 3 years, and I'm done. Camilla set down her dish towel. Then don't, she said simply. And they stood there in the kitchen, 2 broken people who'd chosen each other on purpose, with 2 coffee cups drying in the rack, and a little girl asleep upstairs with a book about the planets on her nightstand. And for the first time since a police officer had appeared in his doorway 3 years ago, Jordan Mitchell felt something. He'd stopped believing he'd ever feel again in this house. He felt like it was full. The 2 coffee cups became 3 in a way over the months that followed, because Camilla started staying so often that Amaya started leaving out a cup for her too. A purple one with a rocket ship on it that Amaya had picked out at the store and declared was Camilla's cup, nobody else drinks from it. And Jordan would come down some mornings to find all 3 set out on the counter by his daughter before school. A small daily ceremony that said more than any words could that the family had decided what it was. Nia's pictures stayed on the walls. That was something Camilla insisted on. The one thing she'd been firm about from the very beginning. When Jordan, months in, had gently wondered aloud whether it might be strange for her living with another woman's photographs, in every room Camilla had looked at him like he'd lost his mind. Take them down and I'll walk out that door myself, she'd said. Those pictures are Amaya's mother. They're the reason that little girl knows how to love as hard as she does. You take them down, and you're telling her that loving somebody new means erasing somebody old, and that's the exact lie we've spent a year teaching her is a lie. The pictures stay. Nia stays. She's part of this house forever. And then softer. Besides, I like her. Is that strange? I feel like I know her. I've spent a year raising the daughter she made. I owe that woman everything I've got. She stays on the walls. Jordan had to leave the room for a minute after that. Ruth came all the way around in the end. It took time. Grief like hers didn't dissolve overnight, but the thing that did it wasn't anything Jordan said. It was watching Camilla with Amaya at Sunday dinners, watching how she never once tried to take Nia's place, watching her correct Amaya's manners, and then defer always to a photograph on the wall. Ask your daddy, that's a mommy and daddy rule, not mine. One Sunday, Ruth caught Camilla alone in the kitchen and said gruff, "You know she'd have liked you. Nia. She'd have driven you crazy and you'd have loved her." And Camilla had said, "I know. Jordan told me. I think about her a lot." And Ruth had nodded and squeezed her arm and never said another cold word about it again. And a month later she was calling Camilla baby, the same way she called her own children, which was how everyone knew it was settled. Darius took longer because Darius's grief had teeth, but he watched too. He watched Camilla show up to Amaya's things and stand in the back so as not to crowd. He watched her never overstep. And the day that turned him was the day Amaya fell off her bike in the driveway and split her chin open, and it was Camilla who was closest, and Camilla who scooped her up, and Camilla who kept her voice dead steady while blood ran down the kid's neck, and Camilla who called Jordan, and also this time called Darius, because she'd learned, because Jordan had taught her, and she had taught him back, that the circle was supposed to be wide, now that in an emergency you called everybody who loved the child. You didn't close ranks, you opened them. Darius got there and found his niece getting stitches and calm as anything, because Camilla had been telling her the whole time about how stitches worked, the exact science of it, because facts were the thing that made Amaya brave. And Darius had looked at this woman keeping his sister's daughter calm with astronomy and biology, and something in him had finally let go. "Okay," he'd said to Jordan in the hospital hallway. "Okay. She's good enough for Amaya." "She's better than good enough," Jordan said. "Yeah." Darius wiped his eyes embarrassed. "Yeah, I see it. Nia would've..." He couldn't finish it. He didn't have to. The panic wiring never fully healed in Jordan, but he'd been right, that the measure of a man wasn't whether he failed, it was what he did after. There were other hard nights over that year, other fevers, another emergency room run, when Amaya got her arm caught in a fence, and Jordan felt the old ice water terror rise up in him. But this time in the middle of it, some newer wiring caught, and he turned to Camilla and grabbed her hand and said, "Stay with me. I go somewhere bad when this happens. Keep me here." And she'd stayed right next to him with her hand in his. The whole time an anchor, and afterward, in the parking lot, he'd pulled her into his arms and said, "I kept the door open. Did you see? I kept it open this time." And she had cried and said, I saw you do it." And that was worth more than 1,000 perfect nights. So it was that 1 year, almost to the day, from the Christmas night that started it all. Jordan Mitchell took Camilla Bennett back to the same restaurant. He'd planned it for weeks. He'd conspired with the manager. The same young waiter, older now, still working there. Remembered them, remembered the whole story, and had insisted on being the one to serve them. He'd conspired with Amaya, who'd been unable to keep the secret, and had nearly blown the whole thing 4 separate times, vibrating with the enormity of what she knew. Camilla walked in and stopped short because the room was wrong. Not sad wrong the way it had been the last time, but decorated warm, and there at a table near the back sat Amaya in her nicest dress, holding a small box in both hands, with the ferocious concentration of a child entrusted with the single most important object in human history. "Jordan." Camilla said, "What is..." "A year ago," Jordan said, "right over there at that table, you asked me if I could be your husband." He took her hand. "You'd known me 11 minutes. You looked at the worst night of my recent life, and you saw something in it worth trying for, and you were braver than I've ever been, and I laughed at you because I thought you were crazy." He led her toward the table where his daughter sat glowing. "I've thought about that a lot this year. How you asked me that night when I had nothing, when I was the most broken and embarrassed I've ever been in public. You didn't wait for me to be fixed. You didn't wait for me to be a good bet. You asked me when I was the worst version of myself, sitting there holding my daughter's drawing, being told I was too complicated to love." His voice thickened. "So I don't want to wait either. I don't want to wait until everything's perfect. I want to do it the way you did it, now, as we are. Broken wiring and all." And Jordan Mitchell got down on one knee in the same restaurant where a woman had once stood up so fast her chair screamed where he'd sat, holding a crayon sun, and wondered if his daughter was the reason he'd always be alone. And he looked up at Camilla and said, "Will you choose us forever? Will you make it official, the thing we already are?" But before Camilla could answer, before she could even get her hand up to her mouth, Amaya was out of her chair. She stood in front of Camilla clutching the box, and she'd clearly prepared something because she took a big breath, the way she did before a school recitation, and she said in a voice that shook only a little, "I'm supposed to give you the ring, but first I have to say the thing, because I asked Daddy if I could say the thing, and he said yes." "Okay," Camilla whispered. "Say the thing." "You should say yes," Amaya said, "because you make my dad smile again. He didn't used to smile in the mornings, and now he does. And you listen to my stories, even the long boring ones about space that aren't boring, but Uncle Marcus says are boring. And you never one time made me feel like I was too much, or like I was the reason for anything bad. And you didn't try to be my mom, you let my mom stay my mom, and that's how I knew you were really good, because you didn't try to take her spot, you just made a new spot." Her chin was trembling now, and her eyes were huge and wet, and she was fighting so hard to get through it. "And when I was sick, you held my hair, and you kept the book with Pluto in it, and Pluto's still a planet in our house because of you. And when you went away for a week, I cried because I thought I did something wrong, and you came back and you—" Her voice broke completely now, a 7-year-old's whole heart cracking open in a decorated restaurant. "You stayed. Everybody I love goes away, but you stayed. So you have to say yes, because we already picked you. We picked you a long time ago." And she held out the box. Camilla Bennett, who had built a company from a folding table, who had faced down boardrooms full of men who wanted to eat her alive, who had been told by a man she loved that she couldn't give him a family, and had believed for 2 years that this made her unlovable, sank down onto her knees on the floor of that restaurant. So she was level with the child, and she was crying too hard to open the box, so Amaya opened it for her, and inside was a ring that Jordan had saved 6 months to buy. Nothing fancy, a small, honest stone, bought outright. This time, no layaway, because he was done buying his life on credit and hoping it would last. "Yes," Camilla said, but she wasn't looking at Jordan when she said it. She was looking at Amaya. She was holding the child's face in both her hands. "Yes. Yes, I choose you. I choose you both. I have chosen you both since a year ago in this exact room when I didn't even know your names." She pulled Amaya against her and looked up at Jordan over the little girl's shoulder, the same way she had in the doorway, the night everything almost fell apart. Except this time, there was nothing broken in it. This time, it was just full. Yes. The waiter was crying. The manager was crying. A table of strangers who had no idea what any of it meant were crying. Jordan got down on the floor with both of them, his arms around the two people who were the entire architecture of his heart. And Amaya was in the middle, exactly where she'd always been. Exactly where she'd always be the center of it, and not the obstacle to it. The reason and not the burden. The wedding was small. They'd both agreed on that without having to discuss it. No spectacle, no crowd, no proving anything to anyone. Ruth cried through the whole thing. Darius gave Camilla away, which was its own kind of miracle. Nia's brother walking Jordan's bride down the aisle. And when the officiant asked who supported this union, Amaya, who had appointed herself to a role that did not traditionally exist, shouted, "Me, I do, I support it," from the front row. And the whole small gathering broke up laughing. And Nia's picture sat on a table near the front, in a place of honor, because Camilla had put it there herself. They didn't adopt in any legal hurry. It happened the way everything real between them had happened, slow, careful through the child. But 2 years on a day that mattered to no one but the three of them, Amaya asked of her own accord, unprompted at breakfast, over 3 coffee cups and a bowl of cereal. "Can I call you Mom sometimes?" Not instead of Mommy. Mommy's still Mommy in the pictures. But you're here every day, and I want a word for the here every day one, and I think the word is Mom. And Camilla had put down her purple rocket ship cup and left the room and cried in the bathroom for 10 minutes and then come back out and said yes. And that was the paperwork that actually counted, done in a kitchen over cereal by a child who held the veto and had at last chosen to use it in the other direction. Jordan learned something in those years that he wished he could go back and tell the man sitting alone in that restaurant with a crayon drawing in his shaking hands. He learned that loving again after loss is not a betrayal of the dead. It is the very thing the dead would have wanted. The proof that the love they gave you didn't die with them, but taught you how to love wider. He learned that the woman who walked out on him for being too complicated had done him the greatest favor of his life because she'd left the chair empty for the woman at the next table. He learned that a locked door doesn't keep the grief out. It only keeps the living out, and the grief is already inside, and the only cure is to open everything up and let more love in to sit beside it. And Camilla learned the thing she'd needed to learn since she was a little girl in a library, reading about planets she'd never touch, that she was never broken. That the man who'd called her a kingdom with a succession problem had been measuring her by the one thing she couldn't do, while blind to the 1,000 things she could, and that a family was never something you produced. It was something you chose and kept choosing every single ordinary morning over 3 coffee cups for the rest of your life. Amaya learned the biggest thing of all, and she learned it young enough that it would shape the whole shape of her life, that a family is not only the people who are given to you by blood, and it is not something that ends when someone you love is taken away. Sometimes the strongest family in the world is the one built out of broken pieces by people who looked at each other on the worst night of their lives and decided against all sense and all fear to choose each other anyway, and then got up the next morning, and the morning after that, and every morning after that, and chose each other again. Because in the end, the woman who sat down at the next table on a freezing Christmas Eve was never there to save Jordan Mitchell. He didn't need saving. He was already right there in his darkest and most humiliated hour. A father who kept showing up, a man who kept his door locked out of love and not cowardice. She was there for something better than saving. She was there to remind him, and he was there to remind her. And their daughter would grow up to remind the whole world that no matter how badly it has ended before, no matter who has walked out, no matter what the universe has already taken, between the front door and the corner store, your story is never over as long as you are still willing to choose someone and let yourself be chosen and stay. They stayed, all 3 of them, for good. And the man who was once told he was too complicated to love spent the rest of his life proving that the most complicated hearts are exactly the ones with the most room in them, and that the family you choose and keep choosing is the one that lasts.